Chapter 3.
Oh boy.
With my cheek glued to the plastic life raft, I opened my eyes to the daylight and reached for Henry. But in the space beside me, there wasn't any slim, long limbs, no straight blonde hair, no biting words waiting for me on the tip of her tongue. Henry was gone. I scrambled upright and squinted at the bright sun hitting the sand. On the beach below, I found her. Henry lounged by the ocean with her hair blowing in the breeze, like she was posing for some kind of swimsuit edition. The life raft seemed stung my thighs as I shifted. I'd been so focused on finding her, setting one thing right in my upside down world. I didn't even realize my skin was on fire. My already sunburned arms and legs had totally baked as the sun rose up the other end of the beach. Wrenching the raft, I freed it from the bushes and dragged it under the shade of the least sparse palm tree at the top of the sand. Behind the scatters of palms, a jungle of bamboo grew dense and dark. I'd move farther in. Alex stepped from the shadows and stepped the surf and watched the surf as he buttoned his shirt. Why I wheezed, my throat was so dry. The sand, it's like a mirror. You still get the reflection of the sun. He bent down close to my sunburned arms. I guess I slept through the part of Lost and Alone. He laughed, paused, and looked up at me with a weird expression, green eyes flecked with dark brown and yellow. His tan had kept him from burning like I had, but up close, the freckles on his cheeks had darkened. He stood, "You're fried, Jones. I know it's hot, but you gotta cover yourself up today." My burn stung as I slipped on my white jacket. "It's fine, it doesn't hurt." With the back of his hand, he rubbed his eyes, still swollen from crying. How are you today?" I asked. He straightened his shoulders. "I'll be a hell of a lot better when I get us off this island." He said it with so much certainty. Maybe he was trying to convince me, or maybe he was trying to convince himself. Either way, I appreciated the effort. He glanced back my way, and his voice went husky. "But thanks for asking." "Sure." Alex lifted his chin toward the beach where Henry parked herself in the sand. "And maybe you should talk to Malibu Barbie about staying out of the sun." I tried. To only myself, I said. "She won't listen." The three of us collected driftwood and spelled out SOS along the shore. Even though our throats were raw and our empty stomachs in knots, we made that SOS first. As simple as it was something. Help would come, and if they didn't see signs of life, they might not hover for long. With our signal done, we needed water. Last semester, I've had the flu so bad it had kept me home from long. With our signal done, we needed water. Last semester, it had the flu so bad. I had the flu so bad it kept me home from school for a week. Fever made me too lazy to find the remote. By the time Henry got home, dug the remote out of the couch cushions and flipped to Cinemax, I'd caught a 6-hour marathon of Lost and Alone on the Discovery Channel. I remember almost nothing except the rule of threes. 3 hours without warmth, 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water. That's how long the human body could survive. Words shredded my throat as I told Henry and Alex, "We have to find water." Alex nodded. Henry had spread out on the sand, this time on her stomach, and resumed her impression of driftwood. A sigh escaped her lips. "Someone's coming soon. Do you really want to drink some questionable water before they get here? We don't know when they're coming. It could be weeks, and without water, we'd be dead by then." "Hey," Alex caught my elbow. "Nobody else is dying." I looked down at where his fingers curled around my arm. I liked Alex's hands. Jesse's were as smooth as Henry's. Alex's, they told stories of hammering nails into the boats, tugging on taut fishing lines, and shoving off surfboards to ride mile-high waves that carried him right back to where he began. He cleared his throat and let his hand drop, then turned to Henry. Any luck with the phone? Or am I being too tragically optimistic? Still broke, Henry said, without opening her eyes. Maybe we could bury it in the sand to dry it out, I said, like how you can use rice. She pushed up onto her elbows. If we had rice, I'd eat it. I'm starving. My last meal was wearing thin too. A big stack of banana pancakes with coconut syrup, a freshly sliced papaya drizzled with honey, and a glass of pineapple juice, all at breakfast the morning before. Henry must have been starving. She'd only gotten half a grapefruit, 2 cups of black coffee, and a waiter's number. Alex took the phone from Henry and looked it over before handing it back. Even if it came on, the reception out here would be shit. You're probably not really that hungry, just dehydrated. Where are we? I whispered to myself, but Alex answered, an island, there's over 100 out here. Part of the British Virgin Islands of Puerto Rico. We drifted a lot. I don't know which one, but someone will find us. He gave me a weak smile. I'll see what's out there and search for a water source if there's one to find. The way Alex walked like he could leave his body behind if he moved fast enough made me decide not to follow. Just before he disappeared around the cliff at the end of the beach, he hoisted Casey's backpack a little higher. It was suddenly strange he'd had the presence of mind to grab it when the accident happened. The memory hit me like a tidal wave, and I remembered what happened after the explosion. When the boat flooded with water, Alex's and Casey's feet pounded against the hollow deck, their hands fumbling for the life raft, me scrambling to find the life vest, Casey saying no. He didn't need one, throwing one to Henry and one to Alex. We didn't have time to put them on. A second explosion and nothing but blue water, the kind of blue that mesmerized before it swallows you whole. Alex and I were thrown free from the boat before the ocean started to suck the hull under. We came up from underneath a wall of water and into the light, sputtering salt water. I couldn't see my sister anymore. Through the tossing waves, I barreled toward where Henry disappeared. My hands drove down, and just when I lost hope, her fingers wrapped around mine. And Alex, he was freeing Casey's backpack from the wreckage, slinging it over his shoulder before pulling up Casey, struggling to hold on to him, only to have the waves knock them apart again. For good this time. It didn't matter. Casey's eyes were already glazed over and unblinking against the gray sky. I don't know how Henry could think straight, but seeing the way Alex for the backpack like it was a lifeline made my sister splash across the surface and go for hers too. Now I moved past Henry toward the ocean until cool waves lapped between my toes. Seaweed stink drifted up from the rushing and receding water. There wasn't much to do, but I could make a mental map of the area around us. Miles and miles of blue water stretched out before me. The sun had come up on the right side of the beach, and the day before it set past the other faraway end. We were facing north. We had to be. Somehow knowing my directions mattered. I turned my left. The sandy beach curved until it disappeared into a formation of rocks that jutted out into the water. To my right, where Alex had disappeared, a tall cliff stretched toward the clouds. The tide rolled out, leaving a narrow path of sand before it crashed against the base of the cliff. With my back to the water, I faced the jungle scattered along to the top of our beach. It had already become ours to me, where flimsy palm trees, and behind them the sand ended with a thick cluster of bamboo and trees that twisted together in a darkened hush. Somewhere in it there had to be water. What are you doing? Trying. My throat was too raw to yell. I walked closer and finger combed the tangles of my hair as I dropped beside her. Our hair was almost the same color, mine a little more like honey and hers a little closer to sun-bleached wheat. But Henry's silky strands still looked blowout fresh. She draped an arm around my shoulders, and for a few heartbeats I couldn't worry about being lost, only that she would move away from me again. I'd never told anyone the future I imagined for my sister and me, dreams that had been part of me as far back as I could remember. So long they'd grown roots and wings. Most girls wanted something different. They wanted to be wives and mothers and architects and Supreme Court justices. But I dreamed of my sister as and me as little old ladies living together in a huge, dilapidated dilapidated house by the ocean. We would spend the beginning of our lives having great romantic adventures. My husband would die before me because men almost always do, and Henry's lover would perish in some old fashioned way. He'd get lost at sea or die of Spanish influenza or something. Lost at sea, maybe the damage I'd done had twisted our futures. Plantation shutters with white peeling paint would cover all the windows, and we'd love them open even while the rain and wind came in and tossed our threadbare curtains against the walls. The wood floors would be pitted from long ago high heel marks, but they'd still be perfect for dancing. And that's what Henry and I would do, start dancing at midnight. We wouldn't stop until the rising sun bathed our washed out wallpaper and our crinkled skin in the light. When our lives were nearly done, we'd only have each other and all the things Henry and I talked about, scraggly cats and faded curtains and missing marbles. We've been gone for almost 24 hours, I said. I wonder what mom thinks happened to us. She probably thinks we've been sold to a brothel or something. Blondes, they pay top dollar for us. Not funny. It wasn't a joke. Henry trailed a finger through the sand. You've got to stop worrying. Help will come. My stomach rumbled. I'm so hungry. Shh, she whispered. Think about something else. Like what? Everywhere my thought ran took me to scarier places. The explosion, the hull of the boat, shattering, the dropping and drifting farther out on the waves. No food, no water, just an orange speck on all that infinite blue, but they always landed me back on this beach where we would slowly die of either dehydration or exposure. No time for starvation. Like what? I repeated. So the shipwreck was an explosion so far. She lifted her chin to the clumps of branches overhead where some island birds rustled between papery leaves. Think about last summer when we went to Six Flags. The day itself was perfect, even if those few hours were the beginning of the end. Our father took us to the Six Flags, only Henry and me. We rode the rides until we were dizzy and ate a dinner of funnel cakes and cotton candy. 3 weeks later, he confessed the affair to our mom and moved out of our house. He'd never taken us many places before, and Henry said later that guilt made him do it. That was our last good memory of our dad, the last time we looked at him as a man we could trust, someone planted in our world to actually care about happiness. Maybe he didn't know that's who he was supposed to be, or maybe he just didn't care. All along, throughout the packing of things and the filing of papers, Henry had been by my side. I hated myself for what I'd done to her. Henry, you know how much I love you, don't you? She pulled away and propped her backpack under her head like a pillow. Her lips twisted into a smile, a cruel smile that had once been reserved for everyone but me. I thought you did. I stood and faced away from her. So she couldn't see the way a few of her well-timed words could damage me. This place is too green to not grow anything we can eat. I'll be back. I made it back to the beach after at least an hour of searching the looser spaced trees at the outskirts of the jungle, but Henry and Alex weren't there. As I walked to the ocean's edge, Henry strode through the sand from the eastern end. What's down that way? Pineapples, coconuts, and waterfalls, she said. Come on, what do you think, Em? Even if her attitude was the same, I was relieved she was trying. Alex moved into the sight at the cliff side of the beach hours and hours later. I'd begun to worry, our eyes connected, but he only shook his head. No water. The sun had moved up the beach, relentless, and Henry and I huddled in the shade of a palm tree while Alex wandered around the waterline, staring past the cliffs, a place where the limitless sea bled into the horizon, like he could will a coast guard into existence if he imagined it hard enough. I left Henry alone and followed the impressions of Alex's feet in the sand. My shadow stretched toward the cliffs, so even though he never turned, he had to know I was there. You were the one who said we should stay out of the sun. Maybe I don't want to maybe I don't want to do what's good for me, Jones. It I took a small step closer. What's out there? Anything? No power lines, no signs of life, nothing. He gripped both hands behind his neck as his hair fell back down. I noticed he'd left faint red fingerprints. Go sit with your sister. I stared at his back, lifted my hand. He didn't turn and let it fall. The sun scorched the back of my calves on my way back to Henry. She pressed herself on the edge of our raft, her arms squeezing her torso as she shuddered against a breeze I couldn't feel. Let's go through your stuff again, I told her. See if we missed anything. In the big pocket, there was a sweatshirt, a bikini, the almost empty bottle of sunscreen, a pair of shorts, a travel sewing kit, and a bottle of Evian that had made my heart explode in my throat until I'd seen it was empty. And this time, at the very bottom, wedged under the folded seam of the bag, a smashed granola bar. Alex, come over here. He jogged through the sand and dropped Casey's backpack onto the driftwood. I tore the wrapper and divided the bar into their pieces. We shoveled them into our mouths and licked our finger long after we'd sucked away the last melted chocolate chips. The wind had whipped all the texture out of Alex's dark hair so it looked soft and fly away. He sank his weight into the side of the orange life raft and held a rubber band in his mouth, reaching behind his head and tying his hair into a ponytail. He rolled his shoulders, winced and flexed his legs. They were tanned, dark, and even all the way from his quads to his long, narrow feet. His shoes hadn't made it. It hadn't occurred to me until then. If he'd been in the jungle barefoot, the only place we were likely to find fresh water, his feet would have been destroyed. Alex, where did you look for water? Did you just stay on the beach? He held up a foot and wiggled his toes. Can't go into the jungle without shoes, Jones. If I'd stepped on a poisonous snake or whatever, I'd be dead by now. He eyed my canvas slip-ons and I crossed one foot in front of the other. Suddenly relieved and embarrassed, my shoes had survived. If you couldn't go, you should have let us, I said, surprised. At the edge of my voice, we won't survive 2 more days without water, and now it's too late to search. It'll be dark. With his chin in his hand, he just looked at me, not saying anything. Henry's words came back to me. He's a real pillar of strength, Emma, and I hated them. Henry unzipped the front pocket of her backpack where she had our trip itinerary, her passport, a TSA approved size bottle of hand sanitizer, and a pen with the name Luquilo Beach Resort. Our hotel in Puerto Rico, not much we can use here. She flashed a Ziploc bag full of tampons. They were still dry. Henry counted out her cycle the month before, and she'd been complaining for weeks about the unfairness of PMS in the middle of her beach vacation. Except those, I turned to Alex. What do you have? He slid the backpack against his thigh before his hand disappeared into the cargo pocket of his shorts. Just this, in his outstretched hand was a small pocket knife. Henry perked up so we can slit our wrists. Alex's eyes drifted over the surf. Maybe it disturbed me, not so much that Henry joked about it, but that Alex didn't. Casey could have had some food too, I said. Alex tightened his arm around the backpack. No, there's nothing. Should we look? A side of his mouth turned up, almost a smile. Look, Jones, I already checked twice. It's only extra clothes and shit, nothing we can use. But maybe I fucking looked, okay? Okay. Don't just, I'm sorry. The whites of his eyes flushed a bright red that only comes from holding back tears, and his irises went a luminous green. In contrast, he got up and walked off between the trees and toward the cliff at the end of the beach. Henry wiped the surprise off her face and shrugged as if every harsh word Alex dished out was something I deserved. Your friend's being an asshole, isn't he? His cousin died, I said. We're all freaked out, but Henry was relentless, acting like you're the one who did something wrong. Oh, what's the word my therapist uses? Projecting. She hated therapy and loved to remind me as I was the reason she wasn't in it. Henry helps not coming soon. I hope you know that now. What I was trying to say was that we were going to have to survive on this island, physically, emotionally, for a while at least. I needed the old Henry back. We both did. She pretended not to hear me. So they find some chocolate and they eat it like they eat it and nothing but like supplies in their bag, and that's pretty much it. Still shipwrecked, found some supplies, a little bit of chocolate to eat, but they're trying to find water and food and they can't. So that's chapter 3.